So which rematch comes first? Juliana Pena or Valentina Shevchenko for Amanda Nunes? Honestly, I don't know which. And maybe I'm not even sold on either one yet. Hey, what's up, fight nerds? Welcome to Enter the Nerd. This is your boy Gashawn. Today, I want to talk to you about Amanda Nunes and what her possible rematch options are when it comes to Juliana Pena or Valentina Shevchenko. Which one makes sense? If either of them do at all. And obviously, this conversation is coming on the heels of her dominating victory at UFC 277. Now, we know in their first match, Pena beat Amanda Nunes rather handedly. Now, the story behind it, especially for Nunes' part, which, by the way, even before saying this is still her fault. She's saying that, she was suffering from COVID. She couldn't spar. What I mean is her fault is if that's really the case, don't even take the fight. I believe even DC in his DC check-in said, why would you take the fight if you know you're that compromised? It honestly doesn't make sense. If I was her, I would let maybe Pena and whoever else fight for an interim title and then come back and just dominate like she did in his last pay-per-view. If I knew that nothing is right, then I wouldn't do it. But even in that interview with DC, she kind of expressed that it was kind of part of her hubris. She thought maybe she didn't even have to be 100% to beat her because she was running over all the girls in the division. Obviously, she was mistaken because her cardio was shot. She was literally just flailing a bit. She said she was even shaking her arms around just to wake herself up. We saw that first match and it wasn't good. However, when I watched it, I knew it really wasn't great Pena because Pena wasn't really doing things that I've never seen before. It wasn't like there was like an amazing game plan by Nunes and then Pena just broke it down. It's like Nunes had to act super uncharacteristically for those very weird and rather sloppy striking. It is what it is. That's just not her forte to work. She just kept running into these jabs over and over again, hoping that one of these winging punches was gonna land and knock them out. And even that first round she did rather well against Pena, and then obviously the gas tank was just on E afterwards. Now in this fight, you put her explanation to the test. And it was absolutely true. She outclassed Pena in every way, in the stand-up, on the ground. In every way, she dominated. So it makes that true. Now, should Pena get an immediate rematch? Here's the thing. They're 1-1, and I guess you could go with the rematch. My issue is, what really constitutes a rematch? There really should be a rule like, hey, if you defend it once, you get the rematch. It seems to be really subjective. Like, they don't really have a rule for it. I think that's what makes it very fuzzy, because sometimes it's like, oh, well, they were both really close matches, so let them do a third one. Or they'll go, well, the last one was so dominating, then let her fight someone else before she does it. And it always changes depending on a fighter, but there needs to be some type of concrete rule that we don't have to guess and see what's going on there. But if she did do an immediate rematch, I guess that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But if she didn't, I guess Amanda doesn't really have to, because there really isn't anything that says that she's obligated to do so. Now, funny enough, after the match, Valentina Shevchenko, she put on Twitter, oh, she copied my whole stand-up style, which is stupid because it's not like she invented southpaw, because that's what Nunes did. She went southpaw. So she didn't fight like Valentina, though. She wasn't throwing anything spinning. Her stance wasn't the same. How light on the back foot that Valentina is. She didn't look like Valentina, just that she went southpaw. And that was kind of a cringy statement, even though I really do like Valentina. Her style is awesome. She's one of my top 5 fighters right now in the UFC. But that didn't really make much sense. That was just, I don't really know. I know where it came from. It comes, that's a woman who has 2-0 over her. Speaking of that, because now they want to kind of make that matchup, they say that it makes the most sense. I'm not sure if it does. So let's take this back to Valentina's match with Talia Santos, right? There was a lot of controversy with that because, she had a lot of time she was being controlled versus the strikes that she was landing. A lot of people were like, well, the control time was so much that those strikes really shouldn't mean anything, right? And mind you, I kind of favor the control time. However, the the commission or whatever, like they pretty much released the criteria for what they look for. Like they said it publicly, which is we're looking for damage, and damage is technically strikes. We go strikes first, then control time. By that metric, Valentina wins that fight. So whether you like it or not, by that metric, even if she was controlled, because it wasn't like Talia was doing any strikes down there, which is Talia's fault. Had she done that, she would have mitigated a lot of the strikes that Valentina was making, and obviously this would be even, it might be even more controversial, but either way, by the metric that they set, Valentina won the fight against Santos. It is what it is. Can't argue with the metric and the numbers that support it in the scorecard, right? Now, everyone talks about the second Shevchenko and Nunes match being a robbery for Shevchenko, that Shevchenko, really won that fight, but they gave it to Nunes, right? Now, when I hear robbery, usually in an MMA match, I'm thinking the judges gave it to a fighter and the scorecard reflects something else. In recent memory, I could use the Ketlen Vieira and Holly Holm fight. They gave it to Ketlen. However, if you look on the scorecard, control time and strikes, more of them lean towards Holly. So you're like, what were they looking at? If the numbers don't match, what were you looking at? The data doesn't match the decision, right? So I can get that, right? And I've actually already watched both Nunes-Shevchenko matches probably 3 or 4 times. But, your eyes can fool you because, once again, you can go, well, I think this. But what does the data say? They gave it to Nunes' second fight, and I thought, man, this was just really, really close. That's all I kept thinking. This was a close match. But then I looked at the numbers, and I kept trying to find different scorecards, different numbers to find something that supported that Shevchenko outdid Nunes in the fight. And no matter where I looked, it showed that Nunes outstruck her, got 2 takedowns where Shevchenko got 0, and had 2 minutes of control time. So she had more strikes, takedowns, and control time. So if we're going to remember, everyone was looking at the scorecard for the damage for the Talia Santos fight and goes, well, the scorecard points to it, so she won. By that same metric, Shevchenko loses that second fight. How can it be a robbery if the data that's recovered from that fight doesn't support her winning? Even round by round, she's getting outstruck. So where is this robbery coming from? And if you have 2 fights where the numbers say that she lost, because remember, this is competitive fighting. Like, we can't disregard the compilation of all of these, the strikes, takedowns, and all that, because if the judges make bad decisions, which they do, the numbers aren't supposed to lie. So if we're not going to believe the judges, we're not going to believe the numbers, what are we basing this decision that it was a robbery on? That I have to ask. So if the numbers support Amanda beating her 2-0, why are we getting a third fight? Oh, because that's the only one that she can fight? I mean, Ketlen Vieira right now, you could probably put her up against Nunes, and that'd be all right. And perhaps we should be recruiting more, we meaning UFC, should be recruiting more for the 145-pound division to give it some validity. But if we're going to do the Valentina match, just say, okay, well, it's just the only one out there, but not, that's interesting. But by no means was she robbed according to the numbers, which is what we use to invalidate the robbery argument of Talia Santos, because they were saying the same thing. So I want to be fact-based, because I love both fighters, because everyone knows that in terms of striking and all that, like, Valentina is probably the more technical and sharp. However, people, they kind of shit on Nunes because she had a lot of power, but she has a lot of intelligence when it comes to timing. She is excellent and super technical on the ground. Like, if we watch the type of things that she does, she absolutely, and mind you, she doesn't even use all of her arsenal. Even to watch how she switched to being a southpaw for like the first time, and she didn't even know how comfortable she was going to be until she did it, and it looked that well. That's saying that she's still a student of the game, and she's learning and getting better. And that takes technique, and it takes, obviously, some real mastery. So I want to give them both their flowers, but I don't know if both of these matches are the true shoo-ins. I don't know. Honestly,